We need roll call, please.
Durstock,
Here.
Luch,
Here.
Hogland,
Here.
Mead,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Swanson,
Here.
and Wegman.
Here.
Approval of minutes from zoning board of appeals, February 2025. Need a motion to approve.
We have minutes, so we're doing those over for next.
All right. We need a motion then to lay over the minutes.
So
The March meeting. And roll call, you said so.
So motion by Luch, second by Durstock,
Yes.
Luch.
Yes.
Hogland.
Yeah.
Mead,
Yes.
Smith,
yes.
Swanson.
Yes.
Wegman.
Yeah.
Under news of business ZBA 2025-006. Public hearing for ramp amendment from urban transition district to the R1 single family residential district for property commonly known as 9200 Sheraton Drive. And is there an applicant here for that? Can we get your name and swearing in real quick, please?
I'm, just so that if there's any questions, I can inspire.
Yeah, we could ask them
Yeah, you guys can.
later if
Oh,
you'd
okay,
like to
that's
give
fine.
the presentation and tell us about the project. So your name,
Casey Chadwick.
okay.
Do you want to come up here? So we've got our for you a second. So both any applicants can come up to the table.
You want the applicants up here too?
Yeah, if we want to.
You guys can. Sorry.
So you have everybody's name? You know,
Yes, they can confuse themselves, but we do, yes.
you do, okay. Then all one time, do you all swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes,
Perfect.
thank you. Yes.
Go ahead, thank you.
My name is Casey Chadwick and I'm the attorney representing the Twigs who are here and they're the applicant for the property. They're the contract purchaser for this property that's located off of a public road off of Sheringham Drive. They're looking to develop just their one single family home to be their family homestead. They'd like to be able to continue the agricultural use that's currently existing on the property. You know, for as long as they're continue to use that, or if for some reason the property was developed later, we understand that the agricultural use would be terminated at that point. Just to clarify, I know that there's some questions, but there's no intention to further develop the property beyond the single family use for the property that they're acquiring. It's just one single family home. There's language in here that says initial. We're happy to delete that because they're only looking for one home and that's it. And obviously, if there was ever development, it wouldn't be something that they're looking to do, but obviously those parties, if there was ever anything in the future that came forward, they would have to come through here and do the appropriate process to do so. So the property both to the north and the south is also zoned R1. There's subdivisions on both sides. So it was the recommendation that we come in as R1, which is consistent with the planning and the best use for the property to have that low density use. And there's access and obviously they'll seek the permitting process and go through that through the building department at that time when they seek to build their home. There is a site plan for their one home that was also submitted as well.
On the board. So this one piece of property is just to be one residential unit.
That's correct. And it is contiguous, the property to the south, I believe, is contiguous and already annexed into the village. And so obviously, we've talked to the county, but they did, since it is contiguous, we are seeking that. They asked us to seek the annexation. So
I'm sorry.
Oh, the question was about a public hearing.
Yeah, were we gonna do that before?
Well, I thought maybe you guys could give your staff report.
I can do that first too. So Casey gave a pretty good rundown of what's being applied for. This is, contiguous with the village. It's looking to be annexed in. And, automatically new annexed land is urban transitional UT district, which acts as kind of a holding district until we find something that's consistent with what we're looking for or what their intent with the property is. And usually that's done at the same meeting as the annexation. So, as Casey alluded to, it's R1 Sheringham Drive, that subdivision is R1 to the south. And then to the north is within the town, but it's low density residential there too. So the most consistent thing would be the R1 zoning district for Roscoe. What else do I have? So R1 allows single family homes by right as a permitted use. Under the UT district, that would be a special use, meaning that the first construction of the home, any additions, alterations, renovations would have to come through both the ZBA and village board for a special use permit amendment. So bringing it in as R1 makes all their residential uses, so their home, sheds, garages, all that permitted by right. Without an updated comp plan, we reverted back to kind of the area context, so Sheringham Drive being an R1 district, and then the town zone in the north being low density residential. Roscoe does have an older comp plan with a future land use map from 2008 that shows this property as low density residential as well. So using that, that's kind of the justification staff and myself are using for the R1 district. With all that, that's the R1's the most consistent and comprehensive thing for this property. I know that there's a lot of concerns from the public about this as well. And with that, Winnebago County also listed this in their future land use map as medium density residential for the future land use. So with Roscoe's low density R1, that's really the best bet to keep this high quality with the village's subdivision and zoning requirements, and then keeping it low density with that R1 district as well. I guess for process, to kind of maybe calm some nerves, that this would not, if the R1 zoning was to be passed tonight, that if there was to be a subdivision come forward at some time in the future, they would still have to go through the tentative plat process, which is ZBA and board, and then the final plat process, which is ZBA and board as well. And the public would be more than welcome and encouraged to come to those meetings and share their thoughts. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the annexation agreement and map amendment of the property to the village R1 zoning district.
Was there any public comment? Anybody wish to speak on the project? Please come forward. We'll get your name and we'll swear you in real quick.
I'm George Schaffner. I live in the Remington Creek subdivision,
You,
just south of the proposed property.
can you spell your name for me?
I'm sorry,
Can you spell your name for me?
SCHAFFNE.
George, do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Perfect. Go ahead.
I actually brought a copy. I wrote it down, to try and stay on track. I appreciate the opportunity to come and address the board. This has come up very quickly, and we haven't been given really proper notice that this is happening. And I wrote it down in order just to try and bring everybody aware of what a whole lot of the residents are feeling right now, especially around our house and on Sheringham Drive proper. And want you to take this in consideration. Trying to put this together in 2 days and get this organized and detailed and thought out and articulated is tough. And there's a whole lot of people that couldn't make it tonight. So please bear with me. I'll make it quick. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to address our concerns to the board. 24 years ago, my wife and I started a new chapter in our life and moved here and found our little 3.9 acres of charm in Remington Creek and built our dream home. We have been there for 25 years. We work closely with the planning committee. Our entire development has a lot of deed restrictions that we had to make sure everything complied to for the overall unity of the entire development. So we work with the planning committee on house placement, house design, house color, everything, landscaping, driveway, it all had to be approved. And we met that and met our neighbors who many of them are still lifelong friends. And we've been there, like I said, for 25 years. About 20 years ago, one of the members of the initial board, the board that managed this, moved away. And I was asked to sit on the board and be a part of the planning committee on the development of the rest of the neighborhood. We are in the final stages of developing the last lot. We're almost done. And I've been a member of the planning committee, like I said, for 20 years. We're in the last stages, so we're in the home stretch. We've struggled on getting the road fixed, the street lights worked on, general road maintenance and cleaning. Now that the road is mostly fixed, except for a culvert that we can't seem to get the city to repair, we're looking at a completely new level of construction traffic coming through to help develop a new lot that was never intended to be a part of our subdivision. We are Remington Creek, and we all have a common denominator, and that is what we agreed to when we bought the property. It is a unified set of rules. So that's the first problem. We're not so naive to think that development isn't inevitable. It also, we know progress moves forward, and we accept that. But right now, we're to a point that we can walk our dogs safely. We can walk our kids. We can go up and down the streets without the traffic, without the congestion, without the construction, without the dirtiness, and enjoy our property. Now our peace potentially is at risk by adding through access to a possible additional development, which the way that we sold our property was never intended to be. Now, we hear that the Twig family is, they're good people. We've heard that. My wife and I are friends with many of the people that the Twigs are friends of. They're lifelong residents. They're from Roscoe. They're from Sherland. They're from Rockton. Their family has been here a long time. We know they want to build their dream home. We really, truly appreciate that. And I hope this works out for them. I really do. However, 38 families are here in Remington Creek that have their dream homes. Some of us, they are our dream homes. And right now, our peace moving forward is at jeopardy. And that's a problem. The point, one of the points here is nobody's dreams should take precedence over the expense of someone else's. Again, I hear what the Twig family is saying that they want to accomplish here tonight, what their intentions are, but what's being asked for formally in the writing is in contradiction to that. So let's take a look at the application. In the application ZBA 2025-006, it's requesting both annexation and a zoning map amending to the R1 family resident status, eliminating the farmland AG current status or what's considered the urban development. Shouldn't this be two different requests? Why isn't a planning map required as part of the application? How does annexation to Roscoe directly affect property around it, being the village of Roscoe and the township of Harlem? Some of that is potentially answered. Regardless of the outcome, the middle district is still in 205, cannot be annexed ever to Roscoe because it would be an island, and the Board of Education won't allow that.
You're talking about 205 Rockford School District.
Yeah. In the annexation agreement, point 1 for this meeting, it clearly states Twig family who are seeking to build the initial single family home indicates in writing that there will be more to follow. Why isn't it worded to strictly only one? In the annexation agreement, point 2 of this meeting, it states existing agricultural use of the property will be allowed to continue until further development comes forward for approval from the village. Why doesn't it state that no further development will be allowed? The request is for blanketed rezoning for the whole 65 acres. Why not choose the area where the house wants to be, rezone that, and save maybe 5 acres and leave the other 60 as ag? I know there is an option to not rezone it at all and leave it rural and get a special use. Why are we going that route? It's less obtrusive to everybody else. Again, the verbal request from the Twig family does not match what is in writing. And the surrounding residents need protection or consideration in the proposed usage or recourse if their lives are upturned. Again, Cheryl and I are not opposed to the Twig family buying this property and creating a refuge for their family. We are opposed, however, for them being tied to Rendon Creek and our community suffering as a development for their new property. We would be happy to welcome those neighbors, given equal consideration for what is important to us as existing residents. Here's a couple additional things just to consider. The residents of Rendon Creek have a combined property value of over 16.7 million, and that's in 2023. We're going to be close to 17.7 million after the next two houses are finished. Tax revenue for the 37 properties in 2023 was $420,000 that we pay annually in revenue. Many of us have been here for multiple decades, supporting each other, supporting local government, and are due this simple consideration. I would encourage the village and the family to work together to find accommodation for them to have their own access to this island parcel outside of inconveniencing everybody either to the north or to the south. Slow down the process. Spend a little more time identifying exactly what's being asked for, properly inform all the surrounding neighbors, more than a 2-day notice. Let us prepare and lock in a condition that is written and as a deed restriction. Do a little more diligence, a little more crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and have it be a win-win for everybody, not a win at the expense of so many others. Again, thank you for your time. I wish you guys all the best. And I'm available for any questions if you have.
Is your biggest ask as far as just you're worried about the construction, the disruption it's going to cause your neighborhood once they start to develop the property? Or
That the traffic of the heavy equipment coming through. Someone already broke through the woods with a skid steer and opened up kind of a path, and now there's already mud on the road. And it's just going to get worse with construction, bringing heavy equipment in and out across the field. And it's going to trash the front of our houses for a year at a minimum, much less not being able to walk the dogs, to walk with each other in peace, having the issues trying to get in and out of a driveway with heavy equipment coming by on a very narrow road. Yes, that's a big concern, but it's also concerned with if the usage of the property is not locked down, have the written match what the family's asking for. Make it you can only have one house, you can develop how many ever acres for this property, but the rest stay undeveloped. Have it put in writing that we have protection from the south and the north, that our lives are not going to change, and the emotional value and the financial value of what we have spent years building and working on doesn't get diminished and decreased at the expense of somebody else's desire.
Because what I'm seeing here is they're asking for the lot size minimum to be increased to the point to where I don't see where you could have more than too many lots than that. Other than the one family, right? Is that what I'm seeing, Joe? Is it 2 million?
Yeah, that's.
Oh, and then 9,500 square feet to the proposed 2,855.
Yes, 2,855,430 square feet.
So wouldn't that be, because he's saying he wants it in writing to say that it's not gonna have additional development other than one family.
That it's not going to be further, because in an R1, they can come back depending on how they set it up and say, okay, we're now gonna divide it and put in 26 residents.
Right.
And now our peaceful road is a highway.
So you understand that for that to happen, they have to come back through the village to do that. They won't just decide to do it one day and it starts happening.
I do. What we are asking for is
So
you
that
to not
is-
pass this tonight, so that we have more than 2 days to do research, to get together as a group and have more of us attend and express exactly. I spent 2 days on the telephone talking to people, and a lot of them couldn't be here tonight because they had commitments that they couldn't break. So there's a lot of people really wound up, and we need more than 2 days and have this more ironed out so that it's written as to what's actually going to happen, and see what the plan is. See a plan.
The notifications that go out to the adjacent property owners were sent out when? Is that-
I don't know the dates behind with the mailings. We generally do mail as well. Posting the publications were February 26th.
Yeah, they didn't receive
Around there.
them till last Friday,
I don't know the exact date that we mailed.
and only the adjoining property owners got them.
Correct.
And that's standard procedure.
We're asking that to be changed, and for something like this that affects so many, we need a little bit more time to do our due diligence and make sure that this is a win-win for everybody, because right now it's not.
So I understand your concerns with the street and traffic, but to build all these other houses that were all the way back there, that all had to happen then too. And we all seem to survive through that. I'm not sure why just one
No,
residential house is such a problem.
it's a different situation. We all bought our properties blanket. The whole subdivision was created by R.K. Johnson. And everybody coming into the subdivision knew what the subdivision was going to be. And as you bought the lot, as the lots were sold, we all knew this. We all knew that it would come to a point that it would end. Now we're at that point. And now it looks like there could be another X amount of houses going in attached to our road, which was never meant for that.
But you
Never meant for that
can't
trend.
assume that a cornfield is gonna remain a cornfield forever. I mean, this happens everywhere. All municipalities expand.
That's correct. And like I said, I'm not so naive to say that development isn't inevitable. But the way this was presented to us with little notice and little consideration is really, really inappropriate. It's not adequate. It's not respectful for the amount of people that have all this money invested and how their lives are going to be changed overnight.
So Tom, is the notice that they were given, is that proper and standard customary?
Yeah, I mean, you publish the notice, which Joe has indicated that notice has been published, and then you send to just the neighboring property owners. Looks like there's 5,
I think 7 we sent out.
7. So that's That's the problem.
Seven out of 38 in one subdivision. How many in
You're now
that?
sending notice to those who are not contiguous to the property. Obviously, the word got out. It was published in the, I don't know, Joe, where.
In the Beloit Daily News, which you look at the circulation of that, no one reads it. No one reads it.
I appreciate that, but the
With the
village is required to comply with the statute.
I understand. What I'm standing here tonight telling you is the way that you did it is not acceptable to any of us that live there. And we're all contributing to taxes. We all have expensive properties that we spent a long time building. And we want further consideration to be able to do our due diligence, to come to the meeting and have everybody be able to have representation. Right now, they're not. The notice that we received is not adequate.
All right, thank you, George.
All right. Appreciate
Is there anybody else that would like to speak that has something possibly different to add?
I'm Sean McCarron, MCCARREN.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please go ahead.
I'll be echoing a bit of George. Known George for over 25 years, or just about. I'm a property owner and resident in Remington Creek, where since 2014, I've resided there with my wife and 2 children. My ties go back further to the neighborhood, where in 2001, my father and I built his custom home there. Remington Creek is a peaceful, friendly, well-kept neighborhood where you know most of your neighbors, where kids ride their bikes, people walk their dogs. And you know what cars belong and which cars don't in the neighborhood. It's a type of neighborhood that many of us remember, where people still talk to one another, where people take pride in their yards and their home. I dare say perhaps one of the nicest neighborhoods in the county. At least our tax bills seem to think that. It has taken nearly 30 years for the subdivision to be fully built, with the last home site being developed now. You know, our concerns really have to do with our homes represent a sizable portion of our net worths, where we spend our money, our time, and make our memories. I'm concerned that increasing the size of our neighborhood that this petition could lead to would put a burden on the village. For example, I've personally struggled for over 3 years to have a culvert repaired, despite repeated requests, to streetlights, to concerns over the road being disrupted and ruined that was just replaced, to drainage issues. I'm also concerned with what development could do to the natural habitat of, the nature. Further, I'd like to point out that the landowner owns a property, it's owned in an inconspicuous LLC, which acquired the property quietly in 2019 for $275,000. The LLC is owned or connected to a fellow neighbor who is in the real estate business that kept his acquisition quiet, with perhaps the intent to profit by expanding the neighborhood and making 30 new home sites, making a nice $1.5 million, $2 million of profit. It is also telling that the same person, not less than 5 months after acquiring the subject property, spearheaded in October 2019 litigation to have the neighborhood detached on the tax rolls from RPS 205 and attached to Hononegah and Kinnickinnick. And solicited funding and support for the litigation from the neighborhood homeowners, with a process that dragged out until 2023, with RPS successfully fighting to keep the neighborhood and its tax dollars attached to RPS. If the petitioner is not lost, neighborhood properties and the subject property would be worth considerably more as part of the Hononegah district. I bring this all up to present the uncertainty and the backhanded dealing that concerns the neighborhood homeowners, and to ensure that now in the future, the idyllic neighborhood we know and love will not cease to be existing, with the additional traffic, disruptive construction, or buildings that do not comply with the already in place covenants that keep our neighborhood nice. We ask that the board deny this petition. Should there be no legal grounds for such denial, that the board assist with ensuring that no connection or easements to the Remington Creek subdivision be granted. Should this truly be one home being developed, may we consider that this after the property is subdivided, with the house being developed at the very end of the existing Sheringham Drive at a lot size no greater than the average in the neighborhood. To my neighbors, please consider this, if this is an opportunity to acquire the said property, should a sale not continue, for a mixed self-financed agricultural use, natural preserve with trails and park for the neighborhood, should look to sell it. Thank you. Any questions?
Is this, what school district is that in the subdivision?
RPS 205.
It's 205.
And this adjoining land is also expected to be 205.
And they fought hard to keep it.
Yeah.
on the tax rolls. So the tax revenue to the village is minimal compared to what the school district is, so.
Thank you. Did anybody else care to add anything? Good conversation, sir, please come forward.
Try not to address other items. My name is Chris Diedrich,
And
Diedrich.
and you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Please go ahead.
I happen to be one of the owners contingent to the property in McDonald Creek subdivision. I don't have any objections to the annexation to the city of Brasco for the property, but did want to make a couple of comments that I felt were completely correct from some of the earlier statements. I don't, like I said, object to the property, but I do have some issues with the fact that properties to the north in the McDonald's subdivision are considered RE zoning, not R1. And that also obviously the lots that have been discussed in the subdivision to the south are part of larger lots. They are R1 obviously, but they are larger acre lots. I think that's part of the statements that a lot of people have made to this point of worries that we have in the sense of if an R1 is granted to this property, that it could be subdivided into a lot smaller lots. And that those are the concerns I think that me and other people would say are true. So I think consistency for the area, I think an RE zoning would be less restrictive and seems to follow what the stated objectives of having a resident property at this time. And even if more residents were added, the RE would be a better statement than the R1. One of the other items that I wanted to mention and had brought up when I was asking some questions about the property with the city is that much of this property falls into the FEMA regulated zone A flood zone around the McDonald Creek. And because of that, I think trying to find a way to make R1 multiple lots or lots out of that area classification would be difficult since R1 zoning can take you down to 9,000 square feet or 2,000 or 2/10 of an acre. And I think if future developments could occur there at that smaller acreage, that would be difficult to do that type of restriction off of an R1. In regards to the submitting that would happen possibly at a later date, I just wanted to call attention to the fact that the city engineer would be required to submit a plat. I know there wasn't a plat layout that was yet presented with this. If there is a plat layout for a house location or what the intention was, I think that would be something that would quell a lot of concerns that people have. The city engineer is required to review any property that has the FEMA flood zone rating in it and give elevations and locations and how it would not be a concern and would not have detrimental effects to not just that property, but obviously the properties around it. If the flood zone areas are affected by changing in the landscape or changing in the house location, obviously can call us back up of the creek and such usage. I think other than that, those are my biggest concerns, and I look forward to possibly having great neighbors. I don't have any ill will towards the family. I just would hope that the city would consider that a larger zoning restriction on this property make more sense. If anyone has any questions, so I have.
Thank you. Thank you. I do have one. Is there public water and sewer in that subdivision?
No.
No. So the requirements for new construction?
It's, the requirement for water and sewer is that if it's available, then you have to connect. But I think the closest one is on Swanson. So it'd be quite far, quite expensive to extend it up there.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else care to add something? Comments?
I do.
Get your name, please.
Michael Polson, Polson, P-O-U-L-S-E-N.
Michael, you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please, go ahead.
I just want to welcome my potential neighbor here, Scott. My property, well, the map's not there anymore. But his property would extend to my southeastern property line. And like our friend before us just said, part of my property is part of a flood zone. It's in and out of a flood zone. McDonald Creek actually flows with my property. And so does the land that is being proposed to be annexed. So I guess I had two questions. One, it looks like it's going to be annexed. And then once it's annexed to UT, then it will just simply be amended to R1. I'm not sure if that's the normal process, taking a UT to another zone.
Yeah, so when any new land comes into the village, it's automatically turned into that UT district, that urban transition. And then commonly at the same meeting that it's annexed, we find what district it's most consistent with, what the extension of the property is, things like that. So
I guess my question is it's just gonna be annexed and zoned to R1 without any planning or development? Taking into consideration the flood zones, my land is actually lower in elevation than the property in question. And McDonald Creek is crested in the past. And a lot of rain will flow down through my yard, and I have kind of a river that flows through it. So I'm simply concerned about any planning or development and how that would affect the water runoff from the higher elevation to the lower elevations. And I don't see that in here, giving it an automatic R1.
So when a building permit comes forward for a single family home, they have to do stormwater, erosion control, and there are a lot of regulations within the village's ordinances, the DNR. I guess that's the state too, the DNR that governs, hey, you gotta stay out of there's like a setback usually, there's things that can't be built within certain flood areas. Obviously, single family homes are pretty high on that list. So those things are handled at the building permit process. And if, again, the kind of concern over a subdivision, those kind of things are handled at that plat, that tentative plat, and then that final plat step, which is public input, public hearing. So you would be able to come and speak to concerns on that too. But again, it would have to meet the village's ordinances for floodplain and DNR.
Yeah, I mean, that was my primary concern, is just giving it automatic with no planning or development that I'm aware of so far, would be my main concern.
So this right now, this zoning district is just setting up what can be the lot sizes, the bulk regulations, and what uses are allowed. So once we get to that building permit process, that's where you get more of the analysis on, hey, does this meet engineering things like your driveway, your erosion control, and your stormwater, and then keeping out the floodplain.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else care to? Comments, nothing?
I'd like to ask, I'm not sure if I can ask a question. That, so.
You just did that.
Yes, Kara Mulligan, Mulligan.
And do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Perfect, go ahead, please.
So I live Tunbridge Court, so I'm not exactly adjacent, but one down. So again, I'd love to have new neighbors, right? We're building the last two. I hear from what you guys are planning, it's gonna be beautiful, and I hope that is the case. Just to, really just this initial application, I guess, is my main concern is the verbiage. I guess what assurances can be provided for the residents in Sheringham and Remington Creek that this won't be developed. I understand that there's several processes and there's more board meetings and there's all sorts of things, steps, hurdles before we were to get there. And I'm not sure that's, the Twiggs plan at all, if it's a single family home truly. But generations pass on. Like I think one of the members said, well, who would think this wouldn't have happened at some point? I think Mr. Wagman. So I guess just as a concerned citizen, right, for the neighborhood, we don't want this to turn into a mass development where you cram 100 houses in, like some of the other communities that we've been seeing lately. So if we could change some of the verbiage, quote, the initial single family home, and quote, the existing agricultural use of the property be allowed to continue, quote, until further development comes forward for approval from the village. Annexation agreement, items 1 and 2. If we can have some assurance that that won't be the case going forward, that would be helpful. I think it was a few other speakers had suggested, you know, why rezone 65 acres? Would it not be easier or more, you know, advantageous even from a taxpayer perspective to rezone the 5 acres, right? Why 65? Can that not be subdivided or agreed to on a special case by case at that point? Additionally, is this house, if chosen to be built as a single family home and staying as a single family home, are our current neighborhood bylaws subject to that property? For example, I'm not allowed to have a shed. I think somebody had mentioned, oh, they're gonna have sheds and buildings and this. I cannot have a shed. Like, I don't have a garden shed. But yet we're building a whole house and or neighborhood at some point. I guess that's my concern. I'm okay with 1 house. I'm not okay with 100.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
I could answer that if you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So with, I think, a lot of maybe ideas about, could we put deed restrictions that are kind of similar to the existing Sheringham neighborhood on this one? Or could we have something else that kind of like flows into that, or maybe is some sort of assurance against further development? Legally, I'm not sure about the second part about further development. I don't know how much you can regulate that. That stop it or block it. But what is possible is that you could put deed restrictions on the property to say, I mean, maybe the minimum lot size for any sort of subdivision would be an acre or something, so that you're not getting, as like you said, that many homes out of this 65 acres. And then kind of to the last gentleman's question too, that floodplain in the middle is going to limit the amount of lots that'll be there anyways, or that could be built there anyways. There's not going to be like a mitigation or anything to try to get rid of it. Any development would have to come and form to that. So that's going to take out a fair amount of lots that would be part of that development as well. Yeah, deed restrictions are, I mean, that's something that the applicant and the board could consider as part of this and a part of the annexation agreement as well. Again, I'm not sure how much like a moratorium or anything would be, how that would shake out legally. But for sure, lot size and bulk regulation type stuff could definitely be part of this.
And I might also comment from the standpoint of, to the extent the subdivision as a homeowners association and association rules and what can be placed on the individual lots within the existing subdivision. I mean, I have to be clear, those do not apply to this undeveloped piece of property. Remember, there's only, again, you know, there's only one home being developed here. The future is the future. I mean, they've said there's no intention on their part in moving forward beyond this one home. Someday that road that dead ends into this, I guess, could result in something coming forward, but it would have to come forward to the village. The village would have to have input on how it's developed, the lot sizes, all the other drainage issues. Those would all be vetted at those future meetings. But again, that's, as someone said, generational. I mean, this may be the way it is. It's likely the way it is for many, many years.
But if I could build on that again, I'm sorry. If there is the question on if it subdivides and then part of it remains urban transition and part of it goes into R1 for the proposed home. I mean, that's potentially, that's not always going to be the stop that's going to be there for any sort of potential further subdivision or development. The fact is that this area being annexed into the village, it's got the low density residential town zoning to the north, and you have the R1 zoning to the south. So, I mean, it's UT today, but I mean, further in the future, when that comes forward, it could just as easily be R1 that as well.
Anyone else care to speak? Here? I think, okay, we're gonna close the public hearing, and if you would care for rebuttal.
Yeah, I just wanted to address some of the concerns. Okay, so there was concerns about the language in the staff report saying initial single family home. And I went back to my application and it doesn't say initial, so I'm just making sure that everybody's aware, and I confirmed that in an email to Evan, just to make sure everyone's aware. This is only one single family home. There's no plans, like, just because the staff report indicated initial single family home, there's zero plans to do anything other than one single family home. So if anybody wants to remove that from the staff report, that wasn't in our application. And then, in terms of the construction traffic, I think that it was mentioned, but they're already constructing a home, one last home, so I'm not sure that there's gonna be too much more with one home, but we're not looking at a full subdivision going in. Obviously, Evan touched on, the floodplain, the site location, all of that will be submitted when we go through the building process. Final drawings will be there. I think as part of my application, I did show a picture of our intended location, so if that's helpful to bring up for people, it's not, it's not real formal at this point, so it's not, maybe overly helpful, but that's kind of the general location of what they're looking at.
Is that the highlighted area?
Yeah.
For the one home?
One home, yep. And obviously, so everyone can see, that's what we're looking at, one home, not multiple homes, not a subdivision. This is what they're looking at. This is their dream for their family to have one home and to be able to utilize the entire parcel for that. In terms of the deed restrictions, obviously, there's multiple attorneys on this panel, but deed restrictions are not generally favored in the law. And so ways that we can get around that in terms of making sure that the subdivision, if there was ever one in the future, and this is, again, not for my clients, but if there was ever one for your concerns, I think an appropriate way to handle that would be through working with the village to ask for a homeowners association and covenants and conditions. And that's normally the place, just like your subdivision has all kinds of covenants, conditions, and restrictions. They're not necessarily deed restrictions. They're more covenants, conditions, and restrictions that are part of your subdivision as a whole. And again, that's not part of this because none of those conditions are part of this because it's one home. We're not asking for a subdivision to all look a certain way. And then in terms of the public road, obviously there is going to be additional traffic, but it's one home with a retired couple. We're not, not going to affect traffic too much, and it is a public road. And then the alternative, I guess, is that the county zoning, I mean, I think it was maybe lost, but the county zoning, the plan for this parcel on their comprehensive plan is medium density, which is much more dense use than what my clients are looking for. So obviously we are looking, and R1 is much less than a medium dense use. It's a low density use. So we're really, we think that we're using the property, which is going to actually be favorable to you. And then there was somebody else that asked about putting in a restriction that no further development be placed in the annexation agreement. or annexation paperwork, and obviously that's not something that you guys do. Every property can be developed and somebody can bring it forward. It can get denied, but you wouldn't put that in, as a restriction on property. I think that covers maybe all of the public comment. So if there's any other questions that anyone has for us, then I'm happy to help answer them.
Sir, please go ahead.
So remember your drawn on there around the lot? I see the plot plan and the contour lines, but there's like a road there. Yeah, so there is like a roundabout or a dead end there. So there are streets drawn on there.
As well as lots.
So it is not, but right now it's one lot, so there is a drawing for multiple lots.
May I address that? Back when I bought the property, there was a
Introduce
feasibility
yourself,
study.
please.
I'm sorry?
Secretary Chair, recognize you.
Yes, we need your name, please.
Oh, Carl Gaspara.
Okay.
I'm the,
Hang on,
oh,
Joe, you got that? Okay. And Carl, you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
yes, I do.
Go ahead and answer.
I'm also a resident of Remington Creek, and I understand everybody's concern. And what that came from is back when this property came up for sale back in the early parts of 2019, I did a feasibility study to see if it could even be profitable to subdivide it as a subdivision. And that was the proposed, if it were ever to be developed. Obviously, I never pursued it and don't intend to. It just so happened that the easiest way to show where they had it was on the topo plan that I had. I also had the whole thing soil board. So we'd see if it even is something I was interested in. To address one other issue about it's owned by an LLC. The LLC's address is my house. I mean, it's not like I tried to hide anything.
People are looking for that though. This shows a lot line though, and if somebody's gonna build a dream house on a large parcel, you typically don't put the boundaries there at a specific lot size.
Right, well, this let me explain that as
It's a
well.
wonderful way to build a house and develop a property, and now you can pay for the rest of the land by the development that happens after the fact. And in regards to the construction of the one house being built currently on Sheringham Drive, that house is literally being built within, 30 feet from the curb? This is gonna be thousands of feet into that lot.
Yeah, no, there's their access, the county doesn't want us to have access from Belvedere Road. We even looked at that as a possibility, and we were talking to a couple landowners to see if that was feasible. And the county denied it anyway, but the landowners that we were talking to, one in particular, who I leased the land to agriculturally, he told me it's a bad idea for many reasons. So we didn't even pursue that, but it's not something we can pursue. Their access to the property will begin at where Sheringham dead ends into this parcel. As far as disregard any lots that are showing there, because it ain't gonna happen. And if you had any idea of the topography of this property, the reason they selected that particular location has nothing to do what was thought of as a feasibility study back in 2019. It happens to be the highest point on the property. It sits on top of a, I think it's about a 30-foot high limestone cliff overlooking the creek. That's why it's there. Hope that helps. And I do want to make one other comment. When we did the feasibility study, at that time, it was Rock River Water Reclamation, and they're now 4 cities now. You are absolutely correct. There is no plan whatsoever for sewer to be brought to this property under the I-90 and all that. So your minimum lot size is going to be dictated, and I'm not proposing to be an expert, but it's going to be dictated by a couple factors. Floodplain and the soil types for where lots would have been proposed. And there have to be sewer septic and well. And depending on the severity of the soil, some of it won't even, and the floodplain, some of it won't even accept the building of a house with a septic system. And some of them would require very large lots to be able to support a septic system. That's why I scrapped it. I'm not interested. But I am interested, being in the subdivision and being part of the design committee, to see something very low density, and I don't know what could be lower than what Twigs proposed to me, one house on 66 point some acres. Twigs could address that if you want to hear from them too. If anybody has any more questions from me, I'll be happy to answer them.
I think we're good. I think we can move on. We need some board discussion here. Anybody wanna? I think what we're talking about then is a single house, nothing more. The concern obviously is a whole subdivision of some sort going in. That's not allowed by anything here being done now. If there ever was a proposal, that's down the road sometime. Am I correct, Evan? That's a whole nother discussion for.
Well, right, because what we're talking about today is whether or not it's gonna be, whether it's gonna be R1, right?
Yes,
That's it.
yes.
We're not even looking at your house.
No, we're not looking at any of that.
Annexing a piece of property into the village.
Yeah, and before they would do anything more as far as subdividing or whatever, would still have to come back through the village.
If you want to build a house, you have to come back to the village. Or they could even start that. Correct?
What's the notice for that? Is it the same as this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. It'll be similar notice.
Anything about posting
Posting,
on the lot or near the subdivision like you see in many developments?
We generally post as well.
We didn't see that on this.
That's one of the overwhelming complaints of everybody I talked to. Is we've had 2 days to prepare to address this. Because the Beloit Daily News has a requirement posting at BeloitDailyNews.com. And the 7 people that have adjoining property, it's just not adequate.
But that's by statute.
Huh?
That's by statute, right? I mean, it's posted pursuant to what the law tells the village to post it.
I understand that, but we're saying that that's not adequate. We need something a little bit more for us. That statute needs to be changed.
That's a different issue.
That needs to be changed.
so the consideration, I think at this time, would the board entertain a layover to give the residents more time to possibly come up with some sort of counter to what's been presented? Or is that a moot point because it was advertised correctly? I know the Beloit paper, apparently the numbers show that it's the most read thing in the Roscoe area.
It's a county in Wisconsin.
Yes, it's a Wisconsin
So,
paper.
it's,
No,
Excuse me,
sorry.
So
It's in ours.
it's, we're done with public discussion. Thank you. So that's something that could maybe be considered. I don't know where else you would put it. Certainly people don't all read the Rockford paper either, so. Is there any feeling of layover for the public, or should we just vote on how we all feel if it should go to R1 or not?
That's all we're ruling on. Should it go to R1?
Annexation and then
This board isn't doing.
We're not voting on annexation.
we're not doing
We're
annexation.
simply voting on
Just
the-
whether we can change it from UT to R1.
Correct. And that would go in conjunct, once it's annexed, then it would be like a domino.
So we'll
You'd
be
annex
annexed.
it, and then it would be zone R1.
Okay. Is it what, once they buy the property, is that what it is, then it goes to annexation, right? Or,
I think it's on contract contingent on annexation and zone. So, but all you're looking at is the zone.
So a map amendment from urban transition to R1.
I have a question. To Casey's point about her application, reading initial single family home, I think that reading that way makes anyone wonder why that is. I mean, where did that come from?
And we've got an annexation agreement that we can put together. I mean, we don't have one currently. Are you willing to put in there that it will only be just a single family home and not be developed for the
Well,
term?
what I heard from the attorney was that's how it was submitted.
We have the application, so I guess we don't have an annexation agreement, so we can certainly put one in there and make that your restriction. So it sounds like that's what you're looking to do, correct? Is putting an annexation agreement where it says this will only be a single family home, it won't be further subdivided. I mean, I guess that's what we're hearing you, right? Your question is. Yeah. I mean,
What she said versus what this
yeah,
says.
you have the applicant, or ask, you have.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't put that, just so you know, we did not put the word in. I went back to the.
Don't put the word in.
I was the one that wrote the staff report and I had remembered and saw the history for what was proposed in the past. And obviously, this is a 65-acre parcel that, again, both Winnebago County and Village of Roscoe have said in their future land use map that this is planned for low density residential. So, I mean, that's the initial word in there. That could be a verbiage thing that I think, again, with Casey talking to the Twigs, that could be some sort of annexation agreement restriction.
I think there may be a limitation on that. The annexation agreement runs for 20 years. I think it could, well, might be unusual to do that, but anyway.
Doesn't seem that that's a good idea.
And it's also not what's before us. What's before us is R1 appropriate? Is the request, are you gonna, motion to approve this and then vote yes or no on the R1?
Further board discussion? Joe, add anything? All right, we need a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll make a second.
Roll call, Joe?
Hogland,
Yes.
Mean,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Swanson,
Yes.
Wakeman,
Yes.
Jurstock,
Yes.
Luge.
Yes.
Thank you, folks, for coming.
Thank you.
My comments to the record, what I read. Please.
Anybody who's here, so that's. Here, Jay. Okay, good. Anybody who's here.
Yes.
Good, 1 second, you guys. If you want to sign in on that sheet, this is moving to the board. I'll email you, notify you if you want that, so make sure you sign the sheet. And
Still not second.
Yes.
Folks, we're still in session here, so if you could take your comments. At least out.
Excuse me, we're still in session here. We're still in session and we have more items on the agenda. So keep talking, but do it outside. Thank you. Been doing this long. Wow, I cleared the room.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I think we were.
I haven't met a lot of you. Tom Green, I'm an attorney. We've been retained to assist the village with legal matters for the last, I don't know, it's been 4, 5, 6 months. And while I may not come to all the meetings, there might have been a red flag that's been had some issues, so Joe asked me to come up. So that's why I'm here. I also have to apologize if we go past 5 to 7, I gotta go, because I gotta run over to another meeting that's 5 minutes away. I didn't think this one would go quite an hour instead of that.
Nor that I.
No, it's not. But I'll meet you there Monday night. All right, thanks, everybody. I didn't mean to interrupt.
ZBA 25-003, discussion and recommendation for approval of a replat for the properties located at 10307 and 10375 Clear Wing. This is a layover from our previous meeting. And you're back. Here's the start. And you probably know a bit the truth.
So help me God, I do. Jay.
So help me
Thank
God.
you.
Thank you.
Jeff Lincolnheld, Arc Design Resources. Apologies. Jeff Peachy was trying to get here from Wisconsin and texted me that he was unable to make it, even with the lengthy delay in the proceedings to this evening. But we are back. Clear Wing, Lot A. The last time I was in front of you folks, it was laid over. Why is that, you say? Well, a quick recap. We are proposing to take Lot A, which is owned by Mr. Petrie, and redevelop it into a planned unit development with these 23 single family or attached single family, I guess, townhome style buildings. Where things got a little bit confusing, I'm going to ask Evan to fall on the sword a little bit here and say, like, the staff report was put out unbeknownst to me and had a lot of language in there about park and open space. Ms. Ballack said, hey, what about this open space idea? We should go back and check the records. Well, in a stroll down memory lane, I actually happened to appear in some of the records from 21 years ago, almost to the month. If you recall from my first meeting, I'm quite familiar with the tentative plat stating explicitly that Lot A would be a community center for the development when it was presented in 2001. And fast forward to March 15th, 2004, and for your point, the village did find some of the minutes. I didn't have the pleasure of attending that night, but our client at the time had proposed to the village plan commission that he was intending to remove the community lot, the community center, and develop it into single family lots. After discussion, the plan commission said, no, we want to keep it as a community center. My client directed me to say that on March 17th back to the village engineer that we were going to redo the plat and keep it as a community center at the time. And the village board voted the same to approve. So it remained as a lot reserved for a community center for the last 21 years. Now, I also mentioned last month that the property has, in the, well, I guess 24 years since it was first proposed as a development. Now, there are at least a minimum of 12 distinct owners within this development of either one lot, maybe even, I didn't even go drill down to like any of the, maybe some people own condos in here, but I know that there's at least 12 owners of parcels in this property. I think the staff report, which I hope you've all read and are up to speed on, had a very succinct conversation about this in their context notes at the very end of the staff report. So basically, the long story short is this lot has been retained in private ownership for 21 years. Whether it was intended at the beginning to be a community center or not, now we have 12 different entities owning parcels within this development. none of which have established through, I think, 3 or 4 different condo or homeowners associations, none of which has established any sort of a fund and or mechanism by which to either A, develop a community center lot, or B, fund its maintenance once it was developed. So given that the history of the property has evolved to such that we have an owner who's kind of basically stuck. Because he's not gonna build a community center and then just hope that people come and enjoy it and pay him money for it. So we're trying to make this a higher and best use of the property. We know that the village needs housing and people want to move here. And so we've come up with this plan, and village staff has been on board for the last few months, and we think it's a good little infill development, and we'd like to move forward with it.
So when we left it last time, you were going to explore possible alternatives.
Yep.
And
We explored alternatives. One alternative would be donating some land as park space to the village. In conversations with people at the village, certain members of the village board, there's really no appetite to take over a public space to own and maintain. We really don't want to turn it over as a community park so that my client's basically picking up all the dog poop in the entire neighborhood. So in light of how the development has proceeded and in light of the attempts to, the prior attempts to, well, I guess in light of that, it was never really intended to be a park. Okay. It was listed as community center. It was intended to be developed as some sort of an amenity for the neighborhood. So since we've gotten rid of the argument about parkland or open space and looking at the historical notes, we've decided to come back and present the plan as submitted, which has staff support.
Yeah, I can go. Jeff did a pretty good, he pretty much said what we did. Our direction last time was to go through documentation and minutes from 2004, it was 2004, 2008, 2014, and then 2015 were the minutes where this came forward. And from what we learned from that and from the original plat, that Jeff's correct that this was never supposed to be any sort of like open space or any sort of parkland, where last month, the documentation we had then listed this as community lot. And with it being open space and unoccupied for as long of a time as it has been, we interpreted that as being some sort of open space or being some sort of parkland or something. But obviously with community center being listed and the documentation showing that, it was supposed to be the homeowners association or some kind of held in common association that developed that. Obviously that hasn't happened for the last 21 years. And now there's this fragmentation with the 12 different groups that we really don't see that that's ever going to happen. So like Jeff said, the highest and best use of the land would be to develop it and have it be improved and upkept, which it's succinctly just not really being that way right now. If you remember, it's kind of overgrown, kind of not upkept to as well of a degree as it could be. So interpreting it as a developable lot originally that never really happened, and then being able to replat it to multifamily and still be developable is what we as staff think the highest and best use of the land would be.
Were you involved with talks about possible donating part of the property as park?
Of this property?
Just recently, since our last meeting with.
No, not that we would donate. I think Josh mentioned I think he possibly would do Dinosaur Park, but maybe it's a dog run in the back. I think he talked about at one point, he would consider doing, but
We talked about it.
Generally, yeah,
I mean,
Who did you talk to at the village?
Joe, Evan, Janelle.
You guys know the
Carol was
donations?
in there.
Was that Mike? Was it? Is that who you were talking about?
Carol was there.
Not part of the staff.
The donation though? I mean, that's, you mentioned a trustee.
Evan, Joe, Janelle, and Carol
those-
were in the meeting.
Those talks have stalled, they haven't.
No, they've been resolved, and the result is the staff recommendation, the revised staff recommendation after a 1 month layover.
What we were looking at was, yeah, was it supposed to be open space or not? Yeah, or was it parkland or open area?
But it was supposed to be community space.
Correct. It was supposed to be, well, it was, yeah, it was a community owned space, correct?
It was listed on the tentative plat as a community center.
Yeah.
Which you could interpret as a clubhouse with a parking
Yeah,
lot,
probably want to call it.
whatever you,
But you guys came back and asked previously to put multifamily units on there and that was denied because it was intended, it says specifically that. I'm sorry, let me find that.
You put that map up, just the new picture here that we have. Of the drawing, I guess it shows. What was agreed upon?
Well, and this says specifically in those minutes that remarks that the community center was the reason the commission approved the tentative.
Yep. Yes, it says that. Further behind on the plan commission summary. It says recommended the tentative originally included the community center be used for that. And no other apartments be added as to determine at a later date what lots 117, 116, 115 can be used for in the best interest of the development. That was the plan commission summary at the end of that. So. At the time.
That's it.
Yeah, at the time this was being argued in 2004, this was plat 3 of Clearwing subdivision, which is, so we had done the first plat, which is was pretty much right along the road, along Roscoe Road. A plat 2, I think, was a little bit further west along the railroad tracks. So plats 3 and 4 were remaining to be developed. So at the time, it was pretty brand new development, actually ongoing, being initiated. And so I could imagine at the time, you know, hey, we want you to keep this community center. I guess my point is there's been a lot there owned in private ownership for 21 years, and now there's 12 different entities, none of which have any inkling to develop a community center and or combine their forces to try and make that happen.
My reading of the minutes was that back then, what was it 20 years ago, 2004, 21 years? That the community center was a nice thought, but it was like nobody could come into agreement of how it was actually gonna come into fruition, right? So they just.
Well, that's kind of some of what the staff research with Evan and Janelle kind of dug through, and actually, I think you guys presented some tax or association dues, I think from 1 or 2 of the associations where there's no mechanism to fund a community center, there's no mention of a community center.
So then it was just kind of, let's pass it through and then down the road, we'll try to see if we can do something with it. So there was never really any concrete plans or anything for a community center. It was just kind of wishful thinking, I think.
Who knows? 21 years ago, half the subdivision was not developed. So it could have maybe been a thing in 2004. I can tell you it's not a thing in 2025. And so my client wants to take the lot that he owns and develop it. As a beauty.
Is this something that goes to the board then, if we vote on it tonight, or is it, we have the final say?
Goes to the board. It's that process. So this is just talking about right now the plat, right? Moving that, right now it can't be built on, right? It's, that can't happen. Because of that restriction that's on there, because of that way it's sort of historically put on there. So the request has come in, it's lower density than around that area. But I guess it'll have to be approved, but that's the plan that's been proposed. I mean, are there questions you have or requests you have? I mean, at one point, there was some discussion about partial, either a dog path in the back or a sort of a public area in the back. I mean, before that development there, I mean, we were sort of restricted to that development. If that's something you want us to go back to talk to the. Yeah.
I mean, we do have open space here, but it largely because this is our sanitary sewer route to get to these back buildings, so.
Who will maintain that open space as far as cutting
Yeah,
the grass?
this would be a PUD and it would be its own entity. So the whatever,
Yeah, so
if you want to say association for the owner of these 6 buildings.
We'll take care of
Maintain
maintaining
that
that open
entire-
space that's
right.
already there.
Right. We do have, I believe we have the village engineers sign off on our drainage memo and our plans. We have the water permit, we have the sanitary permit. We're ready to go.
I think the last meeting, the big concern was too, going forward. I know the zoning, it's been readdressed, right? As far as green space and stuff. I mean, we were more concerned, or I was concerned that we don't have something like this in the future, you know, to where if something's agreed upon to have some type of a community space, that we run into the same thing. But I feel that the zoning's been addressed, so that can't happen again, or?
I mean, with plats like this, sometimes having more of kind of a review process with when a plat comes forward, or maybe if it's a PUD, there's more conditions on a report or something to follow up and make sure those things are happening. But I mean, after 21 years of no movement, and then, like I said, the fragmentation into 12 different ownership entities down there, it's very hard to see that this would ever be a community center or anything. So there are other things that we can do with following up to make sure things do get developed like they should, but this might just be a kind of lost case where it just never happened.
Yeah, because it's not being really maintained at all now, except for the minimum, what, you have to mow it twice a year or something? I mean, right now, it's a mess.
And I mean, I guess that subdivision back there did not have, it was developed by multiple builders, multiple developers. I think, and just as we were sort of looking through all the records and the notes and how this split up, I think the original plats came in by one developer, right? Petrie came in for the original one. But, you know, I think this one was split pretty well between, I think, Three Hammer, or I think it was Three Hammer, or Contrino.
I know Connerino had some.
Contrino had a good view of them, actually, a good view of those in that subdivision.
First Midwest owned a lot of them.
West, yep. So there was a multiple developers building back there. I think if it was developed as one, sort of like Frey Roses, right, where you sort of one unified clubhouse, you've got the same, you know, condos, and they're all paying into it. Part of their association dues is to maintain that clubhouse, and it's a little different. It may have been what the intention was back in whatever it was, 2001. But yeah, clearly that's, a lot of different developers got involved, a lot of different time associations and that joint creation of the clubhouse wasn't created.
But isn't one of the issues that if this development was brought to us today, it would not meet our requirements of having the open space or the green space, park space that would be necessary?
Okay, if it was gonna be planted today. it would
Right.
not.
And this was originally open, it was left open, it was never intended to have anything other than, according to the minutes, what the community center
Sure.
was going to be, so one unit. Not for overcrowding or for other purposes. Wasn't that the intent at that time? I mean, that's, I guess,
Looking
my
at the minutes,
concern.
yeah, I mean, looking at the minutes,
Yeah.
that seems to be it, right? And that seems that the board, the plan commission at the time. She's sort of playing that role of plan commission now. That was part of what they wanted, right? That was one of their big decision factors, was having that. Community center, or having that community space in the back. So you got the minutes we have, so it's your hard decision, right? That this is something you're gonna talk about and decide, what you wanna do with it.
I guess it just concerns me that it was going to be some open space and of some sort, and now it's going to be 23 units.
Well, there'll still be some open space, not all, but I
But it
don't.
wouldn't meet our requirements.
No, but I don't think you're stating it right. You're saying an open space. Doesn't necessarily, the community center interpretation doesn't necessarily mean open space. Could have been the bingo hall or with a parking lot out front. That's how I would interpret a community center. If I wasn't gonna say it was gonna be open space or a park, I would say open space or park. That's. I think we get, 21 years, nobody's beating down the bushes to build community centers, and especially in the middle of the subdivision.
Is there any requirement of the village to give notice to the perimeter property owners
With the,
that they want to change this?
not for the replat, but for the PUD, they would have gotten one since it'd be technically a
Those were
rezoning.
mail published, I know for sure on that one, there was whatever sign was on there. They're not, yeah, I mean, we heard, I think trustee Wright heard from maybe one or two people, we haven't heard from anybody from the public, and they're not.
That were adverse.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, I don't know, trustee Wright, have you heard from anybody? I mean, I haven't seen anybody who's come in, nobody's here for it.
I don't think we had anybody here last time, did we?
No.
Talk about it
Joe, can you ask if there's anybody on Zoom, just to make sure?
Yeah.
last month, excuse me.
I didn't hear what Mike said.
I was contacted by two people.
Two people, okay. So I guess that's the question, is if there's, it's not your only factor, but it's just, I guess, something to take into consideration as well. And I guess, is there anybody online? I did see one name on there, I don't recognize, I guess, who wants to speak? I think somebody maybe contacted Evan earlier.
Yeah.
But I don't see anybody really. But we'll watch, see.
So to be clear, you met with Petrie's, and this is a plan that is.
They proposed, yeah, I mean, I think this is something
is
that,
palatable to the village.
yeah, that's, yes, correct, that will meet our,
That
it
makes
meets our zoning and our development requirements.
So the only other option is to say no and let them sit on the land for ever until they decide to quit paying taxes on it and give it to the village, or.
Or if there's other requests you have of them, or eventually just go to the village board, I mean, the village board may have requests for them as well. I don't know if there's open space requests you have, I mean, that seems to be coming up. Parkland down there, that's an issue, to bring it back to them as well.
I mean, it's clear Petrie isn't going to put in a park. So I think we could pretty much assume that.
Yeah.
But they have committed to some of the open space.
Some, yeah.
So, I mean, if there's a compromise where the village, because if it's turned over to park, the village is gonna have to maintain it, right? So if there's a compromise where they
Yeah,
could
but that's
give some
okay.
open space and they could maintain it. That's better than
It helps.
now with it being a mess too, so.
You have an aerial photo. Having from the map. Joe. I mean, yes, it's a larger lot. Yes, there's more units, but if you look at the density of these units and the amount of open space versus any typical lot nearby, like right behind them, I mean, there's more space to walk your dog here than there is on any neighboring lot.
It's much less dense, much less. Yeah, compacted and much, yeah, you've been out there, I've seen, assume most of you have seen that subdivision out there. It's a different type of development on that lot.
Yeah, it's got the circular drive.
Yeah, there's no driveways on any of the public streets. It's all private drives. Every unit is a townhome style, so individual entry with an adjacent garage. No neighbor on top, beatboxing to the neighbor below. So, I mean, we think it's an upgrade for what was built 20-some years ago.
Any other questions? Discussion? Brad, you've been quiet tonight. You gotta say something.
Well, I'm ready to make a motion to approve, but I didn't want to interrupt if anybody else had a.
All right, we need a motion to approve. Then by Brad, a second.
I'll second.
Was that Laura?
Yeah, fine.
Okay. And roll call, please. One moment.
Smith,
Yes.
Swanson,
Abstain.
Wagman,
Yes.
Feuerstock,
Yes.
Luge,
No.
Auckland,
Yes.
and Neem.
Yes.
ZBA 2025-004, public hearing and recommendation for approval of a planned unit development for properties located at 10307, 10375 Clearway.
So this is the same parcel, they're just looking for a PUD because they need, multiple buildings on the same lot to be within a PUD. So, the townhomes all on one lot, so they need that. And then 2 variances from the landscaping code. One of them is the transition area, so the area around it. And then the other lots, we felt that was acceptable because that matches what's over there right now. Anything more would be kind of look out of place and wouldn't be really consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. And then there's parking lot perimeter landscaping that they need a flexibility for. They're providing 2 landscaping beds at each front of those parking lot areas, which they don't meet the full length. They'd have to go down the sides as well, but they also have some shrubs and trees that kind of help screen that too. With all that, they're meeting the RM, residential multifamily setbacks and other bulk regulations. They're meeting the density, so with that, staff recommends approval for PUD for the townhomes.
Discussion?
Can you explain again what their deviation they're asking for?
So the first one is just multiple buildings on the same lot. Anytime that comes forward in the village, it has to be in the PUD. And then the other 2 are landscaping. One's the transition area, so around the perimeter of the lot. And then the parking lot perimeter as well. So around those 2, kind of in the middle.
Very good.
whatever plan it was that we submitted originally for landscaping. Evan came back to us and worked with our internal landscape architect to beef up the plan to get to some minimum that he was acceptable with. So it's, we didn't shoot out and said like, oh yeah, we want this, and he just, you know, went for it, but there was some back and forth, and I think we ended up with a decent solution. We also have, you know, landscaping around every front door and the back patios of all these units too.
Basically, what I was looking for with the landscaping was, does it look like the rest of the neighborhood? I mean, if we wanted to be to the T of the code, there would be more they'd have to put in, but what they have right there is compatible with what's up there right now.
Need a motion to approve? Awful quiet, is there more discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Roll call, please. Swanson,
Abstain.
Wegman,
Yes.
Gerstock,
Yes.
Luce,
No.
Hogland,
Yes.
Mead,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
Was there any public comment online?
Meet Lonsdale. Anybody here online you'd like to speak on the microphone?
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, the first, we'll be back for the first. Yeah, for the whole board. Oh, I talked about that, yeah.
You'll be online.
Any other old business? Anybody there to? Need a motion to adjourn then?
Second.
Roll call.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Moving along. Yes. Luce.
Yes.
Hogland.
Yeah.
Mead.
Yes.
Smith.
Yeah.
Johnson.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Let's give them some.
I,
Good, everything right for. Just go and beat them up.
It's not easy.